Major funding for this program is made possible by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Inc., New York's Window Company, Capital One Bank, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, Briarwood Organization, Beechwood Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, F.J. Siami Construction, Friedman LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors LLC, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Markham LLP, Marcus and Millichap Real Estate Investment Services, Meridian Capital Group, The Moynihan Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans LLP, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides and Associates, SJP Properties, Sterling and Sterling Inc., Stonehenge Partners, Urban American, The Wickoff Group.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller. Here we are. It's the summer of 2010. The economy looks a little better, even though the market is up and down, 10,000, 11,000. Things are a little strange. But one thing is looking better in my crystal apple. My crystal apple says that the residential market is getting better, both in the for rent, for sale. So what have I assembled today? I've assembled a couple of good friends who really understand what's happening in the residential market in the greater New York and nearby New Jersey neighborhoods. My guests include Philip Eisenberg, the chairman, CEO of Urban American, Ken Horn, the principal and one of the senior partners at Alchemy Properties, Dominic Kama, the senior executive VP and chief operating officer of Investor Savings Banks, and last but never least, my good friend Ophir Denny, the co-founder and managing member at Stonehenge Partners. Ophir, you were saying just before the show, a lot of people, jobs?
It's not just a lot of jobs that are being created right now in New York. In fact, when you read the paper, they're reporting about 70,000 new jobs that we're creating from January. But even if you do not look at the papers and you just come to our facilities and our leasing centers that we have at the Olivia or the Ritz, you will see tremendous activities. We have somewhere between 500 to 700 people a month coming to review our properties. And most of the tenants
Still having cocktail parties? Is that where they're going?
No, we still have parties. You know me, I like to have good atmosphere and to enjoy life and to enhance the life of the tenants. So we are doing a lot of activities. But regardless to the activities, we see tremendous job growth. And it's not just one industry like the financial or the banking. It starts from government, from healthcare, education, fashion, entertainment, news. It is almost every sector in the market is being hiring. Unfortunately, I see the salaries that are from 80,000 to 300,000 because most of our properties are really studio, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. And there is tremendous amount of people that are coming to our leasing. And the interesting part is that 50% of our leases that we sign, and we sign, for example, in the month of March, in the month of May, we signed 63 leases during that month, of which 30 leases were signed with tenants that came from outside of New York. It's people that came as students to study here and people that came for new jobs. So when I'm sitting in my office, I do not need to read the real estate magazines or the newspaper. We see from our website and we see reality what's going on, that there is tremendous move to New York City.
I agree with you, but I think you have a certain market, especially when you're talking about people earning 80,000. Because I'll go to the opposite. Philip has 14,000 residential units, and you have workforce housing. You have people who are earning 25,000. Some of them may be earning 100,000, but you have that perspective. A lot of you.
In that spread, I think last year when we spoke, I told you that there was a part of the unemployment that nobody really sees, and that is what I call the shadow unemployment, which is we have many tenants who husband and wife both work, and then one or the other or both work at 2 jobs. And that last year what we saw was not so much moving out, because we're sort of recession resistant in the sense that we always have high occupancy, but we knew that people were struggling because they didn't have that second job. And that made a big difference in their lives. And what we see now is that in the Bronx, which you would think would be sort of our lowest occupancy, we have absolutely no vacancies in the units that we have finished renovating. And as soon as we finish a vacancy, we rent it. In Brooklyn, it's 1.8% vacancy. In Queens, it's 2. And some harder parts of Brooklyn and like the areas around Nostrand Avenue, etc., with no vacancy. So none. I mean, something's coming up. It's spoken for before the next month. In Far Rockaway, it's a bit more difficult, but we took the vacancy from 9% this time last year down to below 3% now.
That's unbelievable. But that's a perfect lead-in to Dominic. I mean, investors, which is what, a $10 billion bank, do they?
$9 billion.
$9 billion. I like to increase it every time. But a $9 billion bank, and you came in and you opened up a loan production office in New York City, and really to deal with these type of people who have properties over there. How are you seeing the activity and the volume and the underwriting and the acquisition prices and everything going?
Well, I think what Philip said is important, and that is that we've recognized this business as recession-proof. People look at...
Resistant. It's like a London fog raincoat. Not waterproof, water resistant.
Resistant. I stand to be corrected. But from a developer standpoint or from a building owner standpoint, we've seen more activity in the market because people recognize that these types of buildings are good cash flow instruments, good ways to battle against downturns in the cycle. And we've been happy to step into the market in a big way and make close to over a 2-year period, almost $800 million in multifamily loans just here in the New York metropolitan area.
Now, a couple of years ago, and Ofer never did it, and Philip never did it, but there were people, and there were banks, and that's why there were problems with Rivington and some others, where people were building it on the projections. When you're underwriting a loan today, you're looking at the actual cash flow and money in the deal, not the hype that somebody says, I'm going to be able to get when this person moves out.
A la Stuyvesant Town, you mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that when we speak to analysts and investors in our company who want to know and who know what's happened here in New York City, and they want to know, what type of underwriting do you do? Well, we explain to them that it's very, very important to ensure that the current operating income is enough to cover the mortgage payment, not what an owner says he expects to get by driving certain tenants out over the next 3 or 4 year period. So that's a critical part of our underwriting, yes.
Now, Ken, you've had 26 or 27 developments since the history of Alchemy. Right now, I mean, basically, you're a developer of condominiums. I mean, you've never done the rentals. Ofer is starting to learn. He's doing his first condo now, so he's going to take after you. You better be careful. He's over there.
There is room for everybody.
There's room for everyone. So our question is, you got 3 developments right now, plus you have another one in the hopper that you're going to be working on. Tell us what's happening, how you are looking at the condo world today.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than the rental because there are so many factors that are taken into account when one looks at the market. I still feel that there is a little bit of resistance for people to come in and buy in brand new projects. And the factors that are important to look at are the fact that they are new projects, and the public has not really embraced the fact that it's okay to buy in a new project the way it was, say, before 2007. That being said, once you've surpassed that initial hurdle of selling enough units to get you up to the 15% level, the market in those buildings is very robust and strong. However, in order to reach that hurdle, one really has to be creative and potentially offer buyers incentives. A perfect example is a building that we're just completing now on West 58th between 9th and 10th. We started to sell in October of 2009, and all of our buyers were coming in and saying, how many units have you sold? Initially, we sold none. So to get our first 10 buyers, we did have to cut our pricing to basically cost. But since then, those costs is probably around $900 a foot. Now we're averaging around $1,100 a foot, and we're 70% sold. So the market is such that it's strong in buildings where the public has a perception that they will be viable condominiums in new construction. There are plenty of condos out there that will never become condos. Williamsburg, Greenpoint, those buildings are carcasses, and it's going to take a long time for those buildings to resurrect themselves.
I'm going to ask you a question, then I'm going to go to Philip on that subject specifically. But you have a project also on 77th Street. How's that doing?
Well, it's interesting. We have learned that the market has changed tremendously. And 2007, at this point of that building's construction, the building would have been 50% sold. Because we would have been able to sell buildings off of floor plans. We could have sold units when the building was not complete. We now know that in order to market a new building, you need to have your TCO. So we have our TCO now. We just passed our inspection. We'll have it in hand in about 2 weeks. That being said, to incentivize sales, we're offering 10% discounts for the first 5 buyers, maybe even for the first 10 buyers. We'll still do fine in the building, but the key is to generate enough units so that the public feels comfortable about buying in the building. It's all based on thresholds. It's based on 15%, 30%, 51%, all the way up the chain. But once you hit a certain threshold and the public knows that the building will be a viable condominium, the market is actually very good at certain price levels.
Now, you brought up the situation that there are condos that will never be condos. Philip, you recently bought a note, you said, of a condo which might not be a condo, which you can probably make it a rental. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's a small unit, 16 units, and we bought the note at a sufficient discount so that we could run it as a rental and do very well.
So you're going to foreclose on the owner? Or are you going to make a deal with them?
It's being discussed.
And so if you take over the property, are you going to make it a rental or would you do a condo? Because you've done condos also.
Yeah, we've done condos. I think we're not sure yet. I mean, we're looking at the market. People are telling us it's a good market. People have told, brokers have come to tell us, well, we'll rent this up, real fast. And if I can do that, that's fine too. I have no mortgage on it. I'll refinance it and take our money back out, and I'm happy to sit with a rental.
With the exception of Ofer, who doesn't like leaving New York's Manhattan Island, he thinks it's like Haifa. You have to stay in this
I like to
section.
leave the island only for vacation.
Oh, okay.
But for work,
No, for work it has to be in Manhattan. How do you see the residential market in your scope on the other boroughs? Since we are Brooklyn boys over here, Dom.
Me too.
That's right. I did your life too. How do you see the market today? The boroughs.
I don't
because
think,
you have now Millennium Bank that you took over.
I don't think that in the multifamily market in the boroughs has really ever had any significant downturn. I think Philip spoke to that before, that in areas like Queens and the Bronx, as soon as an apartment is vacated, it's already spoken for before the next month's rent. That's probably one of the reasons why we've chosen to spend a lot more time doing our financing in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx.
But you're also doing condos, right? Would you entertain the construction of a new condo?
not at this point. We would probably not entertain the construction of a new condo. However, we are doing some permanent financing, and it was interesting to hear Ken speak about what potential buyers want to see. Well, obviously, they've all been burned over the last few years, and they want to be able to know that a job is going to get done, that this is going to be a nice-looking building, and that it's going to be full of other owners.
Now, of the condos that you finance, the individual units, like it could be an Ofer's new building on 82nd Street that he's just converting, or Ken's buildings, are you going to hold the paper, or do you sell it to?
No, we're a portfolio lender, so we would hold the paper. The point that I wanted to make, though, is very much like the potential owners of these condos, the bank wants to make sure the building is done. The bank wants to make sure that the building is going to have a number of units sold. And even then, most banks, I know in our case, we will limit the number of units that we will finance and loan units within that specific property.
But one of the issues which is important is that the public perceives that all developers are in the same boat. They perceive that if you have a building that's going up, gee, that developer is not going to be able to finish the building. So as a result, there's a natural reticence in the buying public to kind of lump all the developers together, but it's just not the case. I mean, all developers are just not created equal. Some don't have a lot of debt, some have a lot of equity, some can build their buildings as we can, in accordance with the budget on a timely basis. So the public really has to be informed that there's just different product from different producers of that product, which will potentially enable them and lenders to become more engaged in the sales process.
Ofer brought up a very interesting point, which I'd like everyone to discuss, and Ofer to start it. Right now, there are new jobs, the economy looks okay, but, with the administration, we're talking about changes in the tax law. And these changes are going to have an effect on owners of real estate. And that's one of the reasons that, you had never converted a building to a condominium, which you're doing now.
I'm currently doing it, yes.
Right.
On 82nd.
And you've converted a couple of buildings to condominiums. What's your thoughts today about conversion of apartments, to condominiums? Because, I'll age ourselves. You remember in the 80s, everybody was converting to co-ops. Any residential building in New York City, in Manhattan specifically, Upper East Side, West Side, was converted. Everybody was doing it. Do you see that going to come back?
From the developer's side, it's interesting. As you mentioned, as mentioned before, the tax laws change a bit now, and if all of a sudden we're dealt a hand with a carried interest, the change in the carried interest provision. I mean, our units are, our ownership entities are funds, they're REITs, and the general partner maintains a carried interest, and that's going to change. The tax treatment of that's going to change. It makes a difference to us, and as a REIT, we would not convert to condos ourselves, so we end up selling it outright to a developer.
As a REIT, it's a bad income for
That's
you
right.
anyway.
So we sell it to
the
a
tax
developer.
rate is not going to affect you. As a REIT, the earning that you have from a condo, this is why the big REITs do not like to do it, because it's a one-time income.
The residential REITs are a residential business.
Yes. I still believe that the American dream is to own a multifamily. And the national sport in New York, it's not the Yankees or the Mets or the Jets, it's real estate. Everybody dreams about real estate. We are consumed. You'll open the paper, everybody, if it's the Post, the Real Deal, the New York Times, the Wall Street, they started a section about New York where they speak every day about even the Wall Street. We are consumed, we are obsessed about real estate. So I think that we cannot look at 2009 at the beginning and 2010 as an event that will continue for the next 10, 20 years. I believe that in another year, the dream of owning will come alive, of which is it right now. And I believe that for developers or owners like us, the best use for our real estate is to convert to a condominium. Remember, guys, in Manhattan, 75% of the tenants are renting. There is a huge market to go to sell. And if you are buying a building for $400, $500 a square foot, and you are able to get the vacancies, and you are able then to go and sell them at $1,000 a square foot, and you need to invest $100, $150 a square foot, why do you need to build a brand new building that will cost you $1,000 a square foot, that you will have to sign personal guarantees, that you have 3 years to complete, and you don't know what the market here? Here you are dealing with an existing building where you can have 50% fair market, you can sell it. If the conversion doesn't continue so well, you stay as a rental. So you have both worlds. The key to success in our business is about the financing. If you are over,
That's why we have them.
absolutely. But if you take, for example, our project on 82nd, the Merit House that we are converting, we are converting somewhere between $1,100 to $1,300 a square foot. We bought it around $450 a square foot. We are into the deal at around $650, $700 a square foot. We have $8 million loan on this project. If we sell 5 units, we pay the loan. We don't need to go to the bank and negotiate if we sell, how we are going to pay them. We sell 5 units, here is the loan, thank you very much, and we continue. So if you finance your project good, this business can be a very, very successful.
Well, what we say, certainly we provide the financing, but the two keys that we look for are equity by the principal, and obviously cash flow. He certainly describes a situation in which, you can start to put people out of, not put people out, that's the wrong use of the word, but people will leave their apartments so that you can convert them to condos. And if the market goes bad, well, hopefully the rest of the units will be able to carry the debt service on the property. But those are a lot of ifs. And how much equity is involved and how much leverage that particular developer has in other projects and what the market is doing to him in other spots can have an effect. And so I might agree with you. I also believe that all the stars have to align properly for those types of conversions to be successful.
But also in new projects that we're looking at now, the methodology of analysis has changed a bit. 10, 15 years ago, you always looked at the downside rental scenario, then everyone forgot about it. They said, what do you need a downside rental scenario? All these buildings are going to be greatly successful condominiums. We look at downside rental scenarios, always,
Right.
Which is why we don't leverage a lot, because we want to make sure that in the event we have to rent out the units, it's going to cover your debt and you'll get some kind of return on your equity. But that whole methodology was out the door during 2003 to 2007, because everyone thought you buy a building, or you build a building, it's going to sell, and it doesn't quite matter, whether or not it makes sense as a downside rental.
But as we brought up before, prior to the show, we did say that new buildings, there was the 421A tax abatement, and that tax abatement really fueled the fire to sell units, because people said, oh, I'm paying $10 in taxes. They didn't worry about 10 years from now when the taxes were going up so high.
Yeah, but Michael, what's ended up happening on a wholesale basis, because the 421 is in existence, is brought the price of land down. It's all in the equation. It's all in the same mix. If you're going to be buying your land for $200 a foot, it's going to cost you X dollars of hard costs and soft costs. You have to sell it Y. And the carry is going to be a certain number for an individual. So you're just not going to pay as much for the land.
I don't think that the prices of land went down because there is no 421.
It's
I think
all
that
part of the
because
ingredient.
of the financing.
I think it's a combination.
Because
There's a lot of
if
things.
you had financing the way it was in 2006, 2007, and the market was selling at $15,000 or $2,000 a square foot, prices of land would have continued to increase and stay substantially, because people will absorb the real estate taxes that they had to. But I think the reduction of land is all about the fact that you can't finance it. 6 months ago, it was impossible to get loans. Today, you are able to get construction.
There's another unknown in buying a building that's already in existence as opposed to new construction. And you've worked with us on this. It's the apartments that you're going to get back. Some you may never get back. And so you're counting on a projection which you don't really know the answer to. I mean, how much you're going to have to pay to get someone out, whether they're going to buy, whether you're going to have to offer them 50% of market to get them to buy as is, or whether you're going to ever get them out at all. So your projections are not as easily done as with new construction.
That's right.
You know, just a point that you were making before about land is correct. In what we've seen is that 3 years ago, a developer went out, acquired the land, didn't think about financing, just went around, and he knew he'd be able to go to any one bank and be able to do a deal. Now what we've seen is that developers who want to acquire land will first come to us with the project before they purchase and secure financing before they do the deal.
Now, will you finance land today?
Yeah, we will finance land. You know, one of the things I misspoke about before when you asked me if we would do construction on condo buildings, and, you know, Ken jogged my memory there, is, yeah, we will do financing on buildings set for condo as long as they also work as rentals.
That's a new underwriting criteria, and frankly, that should have always been the underwriting criteria.
Yeah, but you can't. If without a 421A tax abatement, you cannot, and I can do it for you, the calculation very easy, you cannot develop an apartment building in New York for rental. It's impossible. Your real estate taxes will be 25%. For every dollar of income, 25% goes to pay for real estate taxes.
But that's why the bank's loan to value now has gone down, because they're basically saying, you're right, there'll be no 421A. Let's look at the bottom line here. We're only going to give you 60% as opposed to 75%. So I guess that what a lender is doing is they're taking into account that your leverage is going to go down and the equity is going to have to go up. So by virtue, Ofer, you're right, the return on the equity is going to be
impossible. Unless you can sell condominiums at level between $1,300 to $1,500, you cannot develop a multifamily in New York as a condo even. Because even if price of land is $300 and construction, even in today's world, you mentioned $375, you're $675. Now you have soft costs that will be another $200. You're already $875, $900. You are building gross, you're selling net, so you're around $1,000 break even. You cannot develop a building at $1,000 a square foot with $60 or $70 rent and expect to have any return. It's impossible. You do not need to even do the calculation. Unless you can sell it at $1,300 or $1,500, because then you have at least 10% selling costs, so your net is $13, so you're making $300 on your investment. So if you put 40% down, $400 a square foot, and it will take you 2 years to build and 1 year to sell, you have to, and after that you pay ordinary income, you go home and you don't make any money.
I think we've got a good perspective on how the residential market has changed over the year. So I'd like to thank Philip Eisenberg, Ken Horn, Dominic Kama, and Ofer Yerdeni, and I know I'll see you next season. See you next week.
Major funding for this program is made possible by grants from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Inc., New York's window company, Capital One Bank, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding for this program is made possible by grants from AVR Realty Company, LLC, Briarwood Organization, Beechwood Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, F.J. Siami Construction, Friedman LLP, Gemini Real Estate Advisors LLC, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Markham LLP, Marcus and Millichap Real Estate Investment Services, Meridian Capital Group, The Moynihan Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Newmark Knight Frank, Orphanides and Associates, SJP Properties, Sterling and Sterling Inc., Stonehenge Partners, Urban American, the Wickoff Group.